right. Now, controlling illegal migration is more important than our membership of any foreign court. That's according to Rishi Sunak, apparently, who gave maybe his strongest hint yet that he's willing to rip up the UK's international obligations to get Rwanda flights off the ground.
Well, speaking to The Sun last night, the Prime Minister said that illegal migration offended his sense of fairness, adding that the Rwanda scheme was fundamental for our sovereignty.
Well, let's head to Westminster and speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, why do you suspect Rishi Sunak has said this?
Well, hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. Well, I think look at who he's speaking to. He's speaking to the audience of The Sun. They want to hear, as our viewers do at GBNews and our listeners, action on the small boats crisis. I mean, this is the PM who called it an emergency legislation required last November, and yet still 4 months later is not on the statute books. Now, we know, or we think, we've been told by very senior government sources that we are going to see this bill made law on April the 18th, after two more spats with the House of Lords. And you're seeing there on the screen now Rishi Sunak announcing his plan to stop the boats. The question from Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor, was why say stop the boats? Why not say cut numbers of crossings or something else? But he made very clear he wants to stop the boats. But the language is so interesting. He said there, didn't he, I believe that border security and making sure that we can control illegal migration is more important than membership of a foreign court, because it's fundamental to our sovereignty as a country. He's not saying he's going to leave the ECHR, but he's showing clearly he thinks that judges in Strasbourg, which prevent flights taking off because of the human rights of those being flown to Rwanda, that shouldn't get in the way of flights. Now, I've gone to Downing Street today and said, what does that really mean? And what we're told by Number 10 is he's saying that if it came to it, and the European Convention of Human Rights was a block on Rwanda, we would consider leaving. So you're hearing, but both of you are very good at this kind of thing, two conditional tenses there on a commitment to leave the ECHR. That hasn't stopped, of course, Tom and Emily, other right-wingers leaping on the language and almost trying to push Number 10 into a position of saying we will leave the ECHR if Strasbourg gets in the way of these flights taking off. Jonathan Gullis, now deputy chairman of the party, on Twitter last night, he wrote that Britain will quit the ECHR if that is what it takes to stop the boats. Sunak tells Sun readers. He didn't quite say that, did he?
No, it's interesting because this is further than Rishi Sunak has gone before in terms of outright rhetoric. But he has for some time been saying that he would be willing to, for example, ignore the pyjama injunctions that were placed on the United Kingdom by the ECHR that stopped that initial plane getting off. He has tiptoed around this area for quite some time.
Yeah. He's used that term foreign courts in an interview that I did for GB News in Kent, on that very cold day in Kent. He talked about foreign courts, and that annoys people on social media. They think that because the UK has signed up to the Strasbourg Court, it's part of our jurisprudence as much as other countries. But he means foreign court is literally a court based in Strasbourg. That's right, Tom. Number 10 also said that he was answering a question, hypothetically, about these potential pyjama injunctions. And what that means is the government is clearly gearing itself up for a big legal fight in the courts. Once the Rwanda Act becomes law, as Number 10 and others think it will do after April the 18th, once that happens, then it will go to the courts to decide that if that law is watertight and can prevent European human rights law stopping flights taking off. So we are nowhere near these flights taking off, but we are getting towards the end of this interminable parliamentary process.
Yes, and Chris, just quickly, could this also have something to do with this latest polling from YouGov that suggests Rishi Sunak is heading for a worse result than John Major's 1997 result?
That's right, Emily. It's a mass poll, an MRP polling. Now, this MRP polling famously got the 2017 election result right with YouGov. It was also this is a detailed polling, seat by seat, showing that the Tories will win just 155 seats down from 365 now that they won in the 2019 general election. It further supports the idea the party is on the course for an absolute drubbing. The Tory party, for its part, or the number 10 certainly, and its strategists are looking and hoping they can make sure that they can get people non-committed to vote this time round, who did vote Tory last time, that can claw back and eat into that election result that looks like it's on its way from the polling. For me, though, I think this party is fighting to stay in the game, frankly, after the election, because it's all about holding and being able to fight against the Labour government in 2029.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope there, our political editor, live from Westminster.
No, it's interesting that Chris brought up this idea of the criticism of the phrase, the quite factual phrase, that the ECHR is a foreign court.
Yes.
It reminded me of a written question in the House of Commons only a few weeks ago. There's an SNP MP by the name of Patrick Grady. He put in a formal written question to the Prime Minister asking for what reason does the Prime Minister consider the ECHR to be a foreign court? Now, normally these written questions have very long and ornate answers. They're for more detailed
He said because it's in
policy.
Strasbourg.
He literally wrote, it's there because it's based in Strasbourg.
Yeah, I mean, a foreign court, people will try to say, saying a foreign court is some kind of dog whistle. Anyway, let's get the thoughts of former MEP Bill Etheridge. Bill, Rishi Sunak talking tough-ish. Should we believe him?
No. Absolutely not. It's an election year. Every election year, the Tories start saying things that they think people want to hear. It's been going on now for, 14 years? Every election, they suddenly become very conservative, very right-wing. It's absolute rubbish. He has no intention whatsoever of leaving the ECHR, which we should have left, incidentally, years ago. And the whole Rwanda scheme is nothing but a great big gimmick to try and look tough. If he really wanted to stop the boats, he should be taking action in the Channel, not spending millions on legal cases and flying people to deepest Africa for some bizarre reason when they've come from France.
But, Bill, clearly what the Prime Minister says here is that last year arrivals were down by a third. Why was that? Mainly because of a deal with Albania, whereby we could send people back to Albania. The Albanians stopped coming. They went from the most common kind of person coming across the Channel to basically negligible in the statistics. The problem is, with lots of other countries, we don't have a place to send them back to. So the idea of Rwanda is you copy the Albanian model, but apply it to all countries with a safe third country. Surely, based on the evidence of last year and the success of the Albanian returns agreement, this could work.
No, it was never going to work, and they never intended to apply it. This is pure Tory spin. And the whole idea that most of these people, let's remember, they're coming on boats, small boats across the Channel. It's really obvious where we send them back to. We send them back to France. I've been to the camps. I've visited there, and I spoke to some of the people at the camps a few years ago. They believe that they're going to come to this country for the land of milk and honey, everything's going to be great, and that there's no problem. We need to make it very clear that actually, if you enter our country illegally, there's a major problem, and not only will you be dropped straight back to where you've come from, but I'd like to see the boats that came in scuttled, and a real point made to the people traffickers and the gangsters who were involved in making all this happen.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Bill Etheridge, former MEP. What we do know for certain is that we are seeing record numbers crossing the Channel still, and that time is running out for Rishi Sunak to make something happen.
Yes, and that election does seem, although we don't know the date, to tick closer and closer. But from one